Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. My name is Bryan Robinson with Code Contemporary, and this is a little video series I put together over the past few weeks doing design critiques for developers and designers out in the world. So either taking beginner designers and helping them work through kind of the intro into the industry, or taking developers and working through their apps, websites, etc., and kind of talking through how they could be improved with a little bit of polish here and a little bit of polish there. So if you're interested in getting a critique yourself, I want you to go ahead and head on over, and I'll put the link down in the description to dev.to, where I've got a discussion post about it, and add your site and any additional information that I need to critique it to the comments of this post. And I will add it to my queue, and we'll get through it in the coming weeks. So yeah, and don't worry, I don't bite. I try my best to be as compassionate in this process as possible. So this week, we have Laurie Barth, who is a speaker and software engineer that I actually had the pleasure of meeting a little while back at a conference in Virginia Beach. But at first glance, right, I love the color scheme and the impact that the top of her website makes. It makes it without a lot of load, right? So I love that she's got this really, I think that's probably pure black for her name up at the top left on that, and I'm assuming that's going to be a light gray right underneath it. And then we move into this kind of very, very rich purple area, and I like the combination of all these things together. And I like this really thin font up here with her navigation, kind of separating it even farther from kind of the logo spot in the top left. And then we move into kind of the banner area. I will say I might try to find something different to say than just your name again in this area. And I don't know what that would be, because I wouldn't put all of like those titles you have underneath it up there, but you're kind of being repetitive with that. And I don't know if you're getting any additional value out of having it in both places. That being said, I love the visual style of it. I love this double border on the top and bottom. I think that is just a very, very classy look. It's reminiscent of like, Roman architectural kind of feel, and I like that a lot. And then I like this shot of you too, because it leads you to know that even if you don't see the speaking navigation item or this item down here that says you're a conference speaker, that is something that you do, that is a part of who you are. So I like that a lot. And again, it's actually a relatively small image, but we get a lot of visual impact from this kind of staggered purple behind it, and those kind of that column feel that your name has right above it, or whatever title you might add up there. I would suggest maybe a little bit more spacing in between the photo and this text. It feels a little tight there, but I wouldn't add a whole lot because it is tied to that photo. I would just put a little bit more there, especially since it lines up so perfectly with the left and right hand edge of that image. It needs a little bit more air to go along with it. Coming on down, we've got the about section. Another picture of you to make sure that we know. I like a circle for avatars. It's always been one of my favorite things to do in that. And then we just kind of have the kind of standard about information. I feel like this might be taking up a little too much space on your page, and it might be time to kind of put the image off to the left-hand side and bring your about text next to it. That can be awkward depending on the amount of text, but I think that might be beneficial here. I might also make your font size for About Laurie a little bit bigger, right? To really give it that space, that kind of that placement in space right there. And then move directly into the about information. Overall, it's a nice, simple homepage. I think you extended a little too far in your footer, so I definitely bring your footer up to maybe about 20 or so pixels right underneath your copyright. But I mentioned it in one of the previous videos. I do like ending on a darker color, so I like that you've gone from the lighter gray to the darker gray in your palette. That being said, I love the purple in your palette, so I might consider putting that down here. You'd have to change your socials to be all white, because you wouldn't want the dev purple to be playing off of your brand purple. But yeah, I like it. It brings your socials down here. Just tighten it up. It doesn't have to be quite as deep, especially I would end it very quickly after the copyright. So I like the spacing you've got above it. I would just tighten up the spacing below. And then let's take a look at the speaking page. Okay, speaking engagements, again, I love the visual style of these banners. And I love that you've got kind of a little bit more of a candid shot happening on this page. And then your appearances. All right. I like the grid style. I think you should probably have the dates be positioned a little bit more centered in this white space. The biggest problem that we have in web design is actually how to deal with awkward white space. We're always going to have awkward white space, but it's what you do with it that kind of separates the polish. And so I would say centering these dates here would make a lot of sense. I might also put them in a bold font. Or I would actually replace the title up to here and then bring the date down here. So it's just, I'm not entirely sure what somebody's going to be looking for when they come to this page. But I think that they're probably looking for the conferences that you're going to be at as much or maybe even slightly more than the date, just because these conferences, geographically speaking, are very, very different. And so it probably makes sense. Oh, I live in Atlanta, so Connect Tech is where I'm going to see Laurie. So just something along those lines. Whatever is going to be the biggest differentiator for a person to become interested in this talk is what you need to have in that top spot. My gut is telling me it's probably the title, although date's pretty important too. So it might be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other on that. Other than that, I like the card style. I might consider bringing the gray down for the border just a little bit. It's a little bit of a harsh line over and over again. I do like having borders on cards like this, but it might just benefit from coming down a little bit. And then contemplate just finding some other imagery. I know that down here you've got these candids from the actual conferences, and I think that's actually really, really great. It might make sense to find something other than your headshot to put on each of the upcoming ones. Again, don't really know what that would look like, but just the repetition gets a little bit hard to differentiate one after the other at that point. I like that you've got a video link. I think it would be super cool to have that be a bigger button for each of these, because I think that's a big differentiator, right? Let me see you speak at these other ones. Oh, I missed this talk. Let me actually go see it later. So I think that would be a really, really cool thing to have there, is to put a button style, maybe anchored to the bottom of each of the ones that has one. And hey, maybe it'll get more conferences to actually do videos of each of their talks. And I would appreciate that. Cool. And then current talks. Okay. What you can basically present at each conference. I like that. I would say that I think that you need to differentiate your visual hierarchy down here a little bit more. I think that your font size for the titles of these needs to be bigger. Right now, I'd have to inspect it, but I think that this is probably the same font size as this, just in the all caps. I would bring it up even more. I would make it 1.5 or 2 times bigger than the font of each of the sets of paragraphs. And then I would up the spacing just a little bit in between each of the talks, just to give a little bit more visual hierarchy, make it a little bit easier to scan through the page. And then let's take a look over at your blog. Again, we have kind of this banner area. I would go ahead and try to center in your blog title here. I think it's a little awkward in terms of the spacing there. But then we move into blog posts. I like this teal, I'm gonna call it, that kind of sea green almost. One note of caution on that though, I'm not sure about the readability of the white on this color. And in fact, just so I can show off this tool, I'm gonna grab that color and we're gonna go over to a nice WCAG contrast ratio checker. So our background is that, and our foreground is white, and that is a problematic color combination. So it might be that you need to darken up the background, although I'd hate to do that because I think it's a nice kind of sea green, or you might need to bring a dark foreground color in on top of it. So if you went with, if you went with black, it's a little harsh, but it gives you a perfect passing grade. You could come in with a dark gray and still get that passing grade. I just think it's always important to kind of keep that contrast in mind, and maybe even these links on the color as well could be slightly problematic. But I like that you've got this kind of color block thing happening. I think that's a good visual style on these. I'd love to see a little description text on each of them just to let me know what I'm about to get into. Since it is linking me off site, I think that's going to be very, very important to let me know what I'm about to read. So just like 2 sentences, and I think you've got the space to do it. I think that'd be really, really good. And since you're doing these color blocks, I actually think that the visual spacing in between them could be cut in maybe half to get a little bit more data density on these pages. Other than that, I like the color blocking. I like that it alternates, just up the contrast a little bit and tighten up the spacing just a hair in between. And if you can, I think a description would be lovely. I think that would convince me to read the articles much, much quicker. So yeah, that's kind of my feedback. Look into that contrast. The contrast is probably the only thing that is of real big substance that I would change. Like I said, I love this styling on the headers that you've got. I think that's amazing. Loosen up the spacing here, a little bit more air. And then yeah, I think it's a really clean looking website. I think that for what you're doing, I think it's perfect. I also like this style, right? And didn't talk about it to begin with, but I like the style of the banner being inset a little bit left and right. It's kind of, I mean, that's kind of the default browser. The browser wants to have a little bit of margin around the entire document, but I think it actually looks really, really clean and nice on a website like this, especially with the color blocking. So I think it's a great site. With a few little tweaks, we'll polish it up. So if you are interested in getting a critique, definitely head on over to that Dev2 link. Again, posted it down in the description. If you got something out of this and you're not Laurie, I would love a like or a heart, depending on the platform you're on, and a subscription or a follow, depending on where you are. And then also, I would love to critique whatever project you're currently working on. So hit me up, let me know, and we will go from there. So keep doing awesome stuff online, and we'll see you next time.